In this video, we're going to define services with the service annotation. We're going to add a service layer. This service layer will actually sit between our employee controller and our employee DAO. Now you may wonder, what's the purpose of the service layer? Well, it's actually an implementation of the service facade design pattern. It's an intermediate layer for your custom business logic, and you can also use it to integrate data from multiple sources. Now, here's an example of integrating data from multiple sources. Say, for example, we have our employee service, and we need to pull in data about an employee from different types of data sources. Up top, we'll make use of the employee DAO, which gives us the basic information like the first name, last name, email address, and so on. We also may need to get a list of skills for an employee. We can make use of the skills DAO. And then finally, at the bottom, we need to make use of the payroll DAO to retrieve salary information for an employee. And then we'll integrate all of this together so that we can give the controller a single view of all the data that we've integrated and pulled together. Now, most times when you start off, you'll have just a very simple architecture. You'll have your employee service that simply delegates the calls to the employee DAO. And this is fine, and this is a very good pattern to start with. So this is actually a best practice to create a service layer and a DAO layer. Because now once you have the basic architecture in place, you can easily expand and extend on it. And this is actually a best practice, and you'll see this in place on large-scale enterprise applications. All right, so we've covered the architecture stuff. Now Spring provides the service annotation. It's a specialized annotation for services. Looking at the diagram here, we've seen some of these annotations already. We've already covered component, REST controller, and repository. Now the new guy on the block here is service. The service annotation is actually applied to the service implementation. Spring will automatically register the service implementation thanks to component scanning. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and look at our development process for building up employee service. The first step that we need to do is defining the service interface. Then we'll actually define the service implementation. Now with our service implementation, we'll actually need to inject the employee DAO. Starting here with step 1 of defining the service interface. It's very simple. It's a public interface called employee service, and we have a method called find all. And that's it. Very simple, very straightforward. Now moving ahead to step 2, we actually need to define the service implementation. We'll create this class here called employee service impl that implements the employee service interface. Now note here at the top you have the service annotation. Spring will automatically register this component thanks to component scanning. Then we inject our DAO using constructor injection, and then we write the appropriate code for the method, and we'll cover all the coding details in the next video. And we'll see that once we get into the coding, our service layer will be very simple. We'll simply delegate the calls off to the actual DAO. Anyways, we have a very good architecture in place. Now let's go ahead and get started, and I'll see ya in the next video. The first thing we want to do is create a new package for the service. So I'll just start here at my root package, and I'll just create a brand new package. And the name that I'll give for this package is service. Alrighty, so there's our new package. Now let's go ahead and create a new interface in this package. And the name of the interface is employee service. I'll expand the window here. And basically, I'll just define the methods here for this employee service. And if these methods look familiar, well, these are pretty much the same methods that we wrote at the DAO layer.
Make sure you choose the correct import here for javautil.list. Alrighty, so we're in pretty good shape here. So these are the methods here for our employee service interface. Good job. Okay, so let's go ahead and swing over and create a new class for our service impl. So this will be employee service impl. So our employee service is going to make use of the employee DAO. So I'll go ahead and set up a field here and do the normal process of setting up the constructor injection for this example. Alrighty, so that's all set up, our field and our constructor injection. Good job. And these service methods are really simple. All we're doing is simply delegating the calls to the DAO. So we're basically calling the same methods on the given DAO. So I'll kind of sit back here and just type the code through. You can follow along because it's very straightforward. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and move into the employee REST controller because we need to kind of refactor the code. Earlier we had that quick and dirty solution, and let's actually remove that quick and dirty solution. So instead of the controller using the DAO directly, we're going to refactor our code where the controller will actually make use of the service. So I'll just delete these lines here for the DAO. And I'll add in a reference here to use the employee service to kind of follow our application architecture. And I'll update the constructor here to make use of the correct types and params coming in. And one last thing to fix here. So instead of doing the employee DAO, we'll change it to use the employee service. All right, so there we go. So that's the refactored code. So now our REST controller is going to make use of our employee service. And we already know behind the scenes, our service actually delegates the calls to the DAO. Okay, so this is good. So let's go ahead and run our application just so we can view the output here. And we'll swing over to our web browser. Yay, it works out just fine. So we're getting the same data